So, the haslab fundraiser for Heroscape Age of Annihilation has come and gone, and I must say, kinda unsurprisingly, that Age of Annihilation failed to be funded. It just barely made over one half of the needed 8,000 backers it needed to be put into production, which is truly a tragedy, of course, especially for us faithful who've been waiting for so long to get Heroscape back, man. Even worse, it seems what Avalon Hill said was true. AOA failed to fund, and so we'll go back into the closet for God knows how long, if it ever even gets trotted out again, that is. So what exactly went wrong here? Was this just a fact of Heroscape simply not being popular enough to swing that much funding? Did just no one care? Well, I say no. I think Heroscape Age of Annihilation could have done this fine, and I think people clearly did care, of course. I think the problem was, well, a handful of things. So now I'm going to take the time to diarrhea out my thoughts on the paper and thusly into a video so I can try to ignore the heartbreak of Heroscape failing to make its triumphant return. I think at a base, AOA wasn't really particularly advertised that well to the masses. I realized that myself when I actually saw a bevy of people on Twitter and every other social media talking about how they simply didn't even know the fundraiser was going on for this game. I even saw a comment crop up in a "What's your minor hobby" drama thread on Ask Reddit. Very surprising to see, even though it fits the criteria perfectly. The comment even popped up on my video, of all places, which, I mean, I guess makes total sense. And I can't lie, I do find that to be an extremely relevant point, since, well, I follow Avalon Hill on Twitter, I'm in their Discord as well, and I barely felt like I was advertised to. Imagine not keeping up with either. A lack of advertising definitely did hurt this project a ton. It's probably the most likely reason it failed, in truth. On top of that, I think another reason why this went so poorly was, well, it being a haslab project instead of being done with something more well-known like Kickstarter. Honestly, I didn't even know what a haslab was until this project started. I know now that haslab is the Kickstarter type thing that Hasbro runs personally for its own projects. Obviously, they would want to use their own platform for fundraising, since I imagine Kickstarter would take a cut, obviously, and with haslab, they wouldn't have to share at all. It's really not surprising, even considering how fucking greedy Hasbro is. Regardless, I do think that being on a lesser-known crowdfunding platform did hurt the project a bit, I won't lie. haslab has funded a ton of other projects in the past, though. A $400 Proton pack got funded, and yet here we are with the failures. Rancor, a Reva lightsaber, a Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, and us. Well, I guess having an R in your name screws you over harder, and we just broke that curse, supposedly. Another thing I'll say that was a major problem was just the price point. $250. $250 is obviously no small chunk of change for a majority of us out there. So I must ask the question simply of why there wasn't multiple buy-in points for Age of Annihilation. Comparing AOA to HeroQuest, for instance, HeroQuest had heroic and mythic tiers available to its backers, $100 and $150 respectively. Heroscape only had the $250 option. A cheaper option with slightly less stuff would have gotten way more backs involved, I do believe. That or even just having a minor $10 "I believe in this project" would have helped. I guarantee most people would have been okay with a slightly smaller master tier set at a cheaper price point, or an even crazy larger one at a bigger price point. Fuck, why not do like a fat $500 tier where anyone who pledges gets to help design a squad or a hero or something? What's the harm, really? After all, the $10,000 tier in Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn got claimed. All I'm really saying, though, is slightly more options would have helped this project gain some traction in the grander scheme of things. Speaking of heroes and squads, let's talk about that topic for just a little bit. I think the miniatures not coming pre-painted like classic Heroscape definitely did chase a few people off backing this project. I myself am not one of the people that took umbrage with that. I can deal with unpainted miniatures, but many thought it was a big deal. And I totally understand that. I think the pre-painted minis were part of the classic Heroscape's identity, and I have no doubt it set quite a few people off supporting Age of Annihilation. Those might have been unavoidable losses, admittedly, but it's something to take note of, you know? Or maybe they could have just offered a higher tier with painted minis if people were that upset about it, you know? On top of that, I must point out the utter lack of returning warriors in this master set. In fact, I honestly thought that was super bizarre. Even worse, the 5 big heroes from the Swarm of the Marrow set were relegated to stretch goals. You do know that Swarm of the Marrow featured a redesigned Sergeant Drake and Raylan, right? In fact, these motherfuckers had Raylan's do a heel turn and put her as a stretch goal of all things. How in the hell aren't you leading with a Sergeant Drake trying to bring Raylan back to the light type of storyline here? At the least, these two should have been in the base set. Shiori, Sanlan, and Q10, oh sorry, Q11 now, my mistake. I'd be fine with being stretch goals at least. Also, talking about stretch goals, ours were kind of piddly. Literally just those 5 figures and 2 exclusives as you back the project. Let's compare once again to HeroQuest, who had money-based stretch goals as well. More minis, more dice, more quest books, more heroes, just more shit in general. Yeah, I know Age of Annihilation and Heroes Quest are 2 wildly different games, but HeroQuest seemed a lot better thought out than Heroscape was. Also, I'm curious as to why these stretch goals for HS were backer-based and not money-based. I'll also add in here that I think they were pretty late with additional details on the project. Stuff like the rules for new players and example gameplay too. I think those showed up, what, like 20 days after the campaign had already started? My memory might be going shit in my old age and alcohol-addled brain, but that's way too late. That needs to be there at the start. Also, it wouldn't have hurt to have gotten a few more YouTubers in on the project a little bit. Not in terms of like design, of course, but demoing it. In fact, the only channel that I can find that did anything like that is Mini Wargaming, a 400k sub channel that focuses exclusively on wargaming, typically Warhammer 40k or Fantasy Battle. A good channel for this project for sure, but why not anyone else? There's a good amount of board game channels out there after all, some with pretty big fan bases, so why not hit them up? They might have, admittedly, but still. Viral marketing is your best friend here with revivals. Abuse it more, you dumbasses. Lastly, and I can't lie, this is more of a personal grievance of mine with Age of Annihilation, so you may disregard this one entirely if you don't agree, of course. But the utter lack of historical units was a turnoff for me. Heroscape's supposed to be this wild confluence of fantasy, sci-fi, and historical warriors coming together to do battle in the lands of Valhalla. Age of Annihilation went way too hard on the fantasy and sci-fi side of things, at least in my opinion, of course. There seemed to be a really huge focus on like steampunk stuff, biomechanical nightmares, and there was even more of a focus on the typical fantasy creatures, but a lot of these designs seemed really busy in my opinion. In fact, out of all these things, the only thing you could vaguely say was a historical warrior of any kind was the pirate, Killian Vate, and I'm really stretching it with that one. Mind you, I'm not saying this focus was bad or anything. There were a few new characters and stuff I really liked, but this is Heroscape. As I said, it's a confluence of those 3 things, and a historical part was just gone entirely. I think at a minimum, a new squad of samurai should have been included, since I think even they're some of the most iconic miniatures, and not to mention they're some of the most numerous squads and heroes in Heroscape. Perhaps a squad of Viking warriors even, there were a few wave of those. A hero as well, perhaps? But no, the only truly historic warrior was locked as a backer bonus, and even Sergeant Drake is kind of fantasy-ish, since he uses a jetpack and a fucking katana that allows him to avoid ranged attacks of all kinds. Hell, no historical concepts even really made it in. Here's an idea. Implement a race of lizardmen that have adopted the warrior customs of the samurai. Kind of like the Hisho from Endless Space 2. Even something like that would have been nice, but it's just all predominantly high fantasy horse shit. So just to try to wrap stuff up here, this project's failure was a pretty big mix of different things, at least in my humble opinion. And honestly, it doesn't even feel like Hasbro had much faith in this project either. Nothing like seeing a project you care about send out to die and never be heard from again. It'd be nice to see this one given another shot sometime in the near future, but given how black and white things tend to be with major companies, Heroscape is most likely just seen as a failure and will probably just be shelved indefinitely, never to be seen again. Not to mention that Hasbro is an insanely fucking greedy company on top of its little extra arm in Wizards of the Coast. You guys heard about that new thing where they are trying to claim basically every intellectual property that has even anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah, fuck that company. I suppose it's nice they even remembered us Heroscape faithful, but being cock-teased and promptly blue-balled is such a miserable feeling that I hope to God we get this project back someday. Anyway, I must stop now, otherwise I'll go on all day. So, as always, dearest viewers, I thank you a ton for watching this video. Feel free to add your 2 cents as to why Age of Annihilation failed to make its goal. Also, be sure to drop a fat like and subscribe. I'm not a Heroscape channel, obviously, but I generally make funny game reviews, and one of those might just brighten your day after this miserable fucking failure. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.